Hey, this is Rob Charning with Old Guy TV on Opinion versus Pinion for June 4, 2014, and a very hot, almost summer day here. And with me I have John Majestic, Jonathan Charney, and again I'm Rob Charney, and we're going to talk about elections. And
I want to say something first.
But John wanted to say something first.
Well, mine's short.
All right, what?
Leland Yee, that's it.
Okay,
no,
good.
Okay, and I will follow up.
Okay.
The informed electorate of
Yes.
the state of California voted 280,000 votes for Leland Yee to be Secretary of State.
Yeah.
People.
Fortunately, that was the bottom of the barrel, which was
But
nice.
200,000 people. I mean, that's
Almost 300,000 people.
It shows you how stupid the state is, and of course the fact is we're looking at just barely 32 to 33% of the registered voters voted.
I mean, he's sharing a cell with Shrimp Boy, who's a triad member, has been his whole life. I mean, how do you not? I mean, this is that even shocks
It's
me.
called an informed electorate, and
Yeah.
obviously some people didn't get the word.
They
They
did
said
not.
his name would not be on the ballot, but I don't think
It was.
Yeah, it was.
It was.
It was on ours.
Because this just goes to show what name recognition could do. It could be, and I will conjecture that possibly some Chinese population
Right.
that may not be totally fluent in English yet saw the name Yi and identified with it. Leland Yee's name has been in the paper, so people go, I know that name.
I don't think that guy's
Exactly.
done anything even remotely helpful in his entire career, at least since I've been following it.
But I think the point that John's making is that just about anybody can get votes just on a name,
Well, yeah.
and that's why a lot of incumbents continuously get reelected. It's not because they're doing anything good. It's just people go, oh, I recognize that name, so I'm going to vote for it.
I actually think that's
in,
part of
in
the
the state of
reason.
California, in general, when you say Brown, people respond with,
Beam me up, Scott.
that's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I
That's
actually
pretty good.
think that's how George W. Bush helped his numbers, because I knew a lot of people who really liked his dad, because W's politics were very fascinating.
W's politics, I don't want to get into.
Well, no,
No,
I'm just
but-
general numbers.
I'd rather
wise.
talk
I
about
thought,
California.
yeah,
politics.
let's not
No,
talk
no,
about.
but see,
I
you
think
guys,
W should have remained in Major League Baseball.
Well, I was talking sheer just on name recognition. I wasn't talking about politics. I was just saying I actually
making
think
an
that helped
example.
him getting
Yeah.
elected.
That how
The
name
only-
recognition
The only
could do it.
problem is Jeb Bush doesn't feel the same way about it as
Oh,
you
no.
do.
But I also think Hillary has a really good chance if she decides to run, because of her philandering husband is still a amazing politician.
Jesus Christ, you were barely old enough to know what was hell it was going on. Her philandering husband.
Are you kidding? That dude cheated on her so much. I mean, he's
So what? So did Kennedy. Kennedy cheated on Jackie. He was having an affair with his brother and Marilyn Monroe.
The difference-
It wasn't a matter of public record in the 60s.
the difference.
We didn't
is,
have
talk
internet.
well, the difference is everybody, including the press, were in on it, and they didn't say anything.
Yeah, different times. The whole thing was totally different, and
You know what?
it doesn't
And
make it right.
It's all a cat playing with the ball while the real fire is burning over here, and it's just a distraction. All of it.
Well, I-
For Monica Lewinsky comes out of the woods after not doing an interview for 10 years,
You see how
and
this
now
works?
that
I
Hillary Clinton even, whoa, she's back.
You see, I
They
just
did-
make a
don't
minor
get me
joke
started
and
on this
says the whole thing.
Bergdorf thing.
Yeah.
The guy that just got released, and when John McCain, a former POW, turns on another POW, it ain't nothing but politics.
Are we talking about the new guy?
Bergdahl.
Is that what his name is?
Yeah. What do you mean by new guy? You mean the
most recent.
the rescued POW, the
Yeah.
only POW.
The last standing
Yes.
man in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
the last
Yeah.
prisoner they had.
Yeah, we're
I've-
talking about that.
See
I don't want to go into it in depth. We can do that next week, but it's like, come on.
Do you notice? You know, we were talking about name recognition here. You know what really kills me? You know, Nancy Pelosi got 73% of the vote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she hasn't been effective since the
But
day she
look
was
at her
elected.
district.
It's
Her
just
district. It's inherent in her district. If Pelosi's on, they just go Pelosi. And there's nobody to run against her.
And Pelosi's
And you
not
know how-
effective at all.
you know how I feel about that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm thinking 70-year-old women, ain't the? I mean, I don't know if you took the time to watch the debate or discussion between Piketty, the Frenchman, and
Yeah.
and the senator from Massachusetts, who unfortunately I can't remember her name at the moment. But I would much rather she run than Hillary.
Yeah. Well, I think
Because
Hillary.
she's a consumerist. She's looking out for
Yeah.
not them, this one.
If Hillary does decide to run, which I think I haven't heard it, it's for sure. I think her health issue is definitely going to be a reason if she doesn't. But
You're
I
listening to Karl Rove. That's nonsense.
Well,
Don't listen to Karl Rove.
Well,
he
who's
hasn't
listening?
had a winner since W.
Well, what I'm saying is because she's had a lot of health issues.
Well, she's admitted
And
it. In this,
She's in her mid 60s. Guess what? Your
Yeah.
father's had health issues.
Well, yeah,
I've
but-
had health issues. When you turn 60, the body goes, you know.
No, yes, I know that, but what I'm saying is I could see her, and especially the level of health issues she's had in the last 5 years, I could see her saying it might not be worth it. On the other hand, she does have some great political people in her corner, her husband being one of them.
But the problem is you can't reelect a president after 4 years. And Hillary got her lunch packed and handed to her when she tried to become not just the first lady in support of universal health, but she had a plan and she was going to put it through.
right.
Right alongside her husband. And the Republican Party kind of said,
Nah.
you know what? I don't think so.
I
And she got stuffed and canned.
I do think she's kind of tainted goods, though. I do think there's some stuff in her background that they'll have to do some fancy things.
I understand where you're coming from, but you know what? There's something about the name and the woman. I don't
no,
think
I don't
think
disagree
there's
with that.
any.
I think it would be, I
Therein
think it would be an
lies,
uphill-
and you know
I
I've
think
said
would
it
be an uphill
before,
battle
and
in
I'll
order
say
for
it
that to
again.
happen.
2014, 2016 is all about women voters, and they resonate with Hillary.
I do,
Why exactly? I'm not sure.
I do think that in order for some of her baggage to affect her, it would be they'd have to hit a really good note. But because she's a woman, because she's Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton's wife, that's a great amount of momentum. Considering most people think about the '90s and think about the economic of the times.
Yeah, she if she decides to be the Democratic candidate, she will be the Democratic candidate.
Oh, the Elizabeth Warren, whose name was escaping me. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but it's too. If I were running against her, I could build a campaign of why you shouldn't, and a strong one, especially after Barack Obama, because you have a new senator that hasn't even finished a term, Harvard Law. There are many similarities that right now I think would not bode well for her. There are a few governors. But as the conversation I was having with our junior high school and high school friend today, the GOP has done a great job of marketing what they want to market, and the Democrats are just reactors. They're not leaders. They're taking the Obama point of view. We'll sit back and be staid and keep a very solid demeanor, but don't aggressively do anything.
I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing some of the more Democratic candidates start to back away from Obama a little bit, considering some of the things that a lot of Americans view as a problem. I don't say completely, but I could see the shifting a little bit.
It's been happening throughout the years. People have been distancing themselves as his second term has come up. Now they're starting to step back a little bit.
But do you think it would
Well,
be?
the question is really at this point is, do you run with or against Obamacare?
Right.
And McConnell's got himself in a hell of a spot. The Democratic governor of Kentucky has one of the most successful insurance exchanges in the country, with over 400,000 people enrolled in Obamacare in his home state.
As much as I hate Obamacare for the problems it's given me of late, I actually do think running against Obamacare is a waste of time. I think you'd be better on a platform of changing it, improving it, refining it. because it's not going to change.
Offer improvement. Don't and I don't know. The latest thing on the national political scene that's made me crazy is Ted Cruz's campaign of claiming that 41 Democrats want to repeal the First Amendment. And if you read the proposed legislation, they don't want to repeal the First Amendment. They want to get into Citizens United and get money out of politics. But since Citizens United grants corporations and political individuals the same rights as an individual to free speech, is where he's basing that 41 Democrats want to repeal the First Amendment. I mean, come on, let's take a giant leap. If you really read the legislation, it's got nothing to do with repealing the First Amendment. It's got to do with getting money out of politics and government, which I don't think anybody that's thought about this for more than 10 minutes would disagree. We got to get the money out of this thing because we're not the money. It doesn't represent us.
I don't understand how people would say, oh, yes, he wants to get rid of the First Amendment, considering how much work it actually is to modify the federal Constitution.
It doesn't make any sense.
You have to remember that over the last 10 years, we've had a movement to repeal the 14th Amendment. I saw a post on Facebook, get rid of citizenship at birth this morning.
Yeah.
That's the 14th Amendment, thank you. And as I pointed out when the repeal of the First Amendment thing came up, I said, well, let's put it this way. The Equal Rights Amendment, which I think was passed in 80 what? Right?
Was it passed or ratified?
No, it passed the Senate and the Congress. It was not ratified by 2/3 of the state. And if you're going to repeal an amendment, it's got to be ratified by 2/3 of the states. Or if you're going to pass an amendment, then. And right now, I don't think you get agreement by 2/3 of the states on what time it is in their zone.
I think the 14th Amendment one is the most interesting because every argument I've heard of that wants to align it like a lot of the European states where one parent has to be a citizen. But that's the only thing I've heard of it that makes any sense. Everything else is kind of a little wacky.
You mean as far as repealing it goes?
Yeah, I've heard repealing it as far as changing it, like not a lot, but some of the Democrats want to add hunting on the second.
Yeah.
So.
Huh?
I've heard some Democrats, and I think they're more crazy leaning. They say they want to refine the language of the Second Amendment so it only applies to,
How'd we go from the 14th Amendment to the Second Amendment?
I'm just making far as amendments in general.
But of course, you talked about the First Amendment too.
I understand that, but I don't.
I'm jumping around. It's kind of
nobody stands a chance of messing with the Second Amendment, whether it be Democrat or Republican.
I actually don't think
anything scares me when they start talking about wanting to make any changes to our Constitution. It scares me. I don't care if I like it or dislike it.
Rob, I understand what you're saying. I agree. If anybody, The reason it's a constitution and the reason it requires not only the vote of the Senate and the Congress plus a 2/3 ratification of the states is because it's not something that you do lightly.
Exactly.
And I don't see, we can get upset. We've already been there, done that. We've been through Newtown and everyone thereafter with OVO. And I think the problem is a problem, but identify a reasonable solution that's even halfway satisfactory and will accomplish anything.
I do have a question for you, too, and I know we're on kind of a limited time. What was politics back when you were younger, say 50s, 60s, you can remember, is reactionary as they are now? Because politics now are ridiculous.
Well, no, you have to go back, and as much as I like Herbert Walker Bush, H.W., old Bush, his whole Texas congressional campaign was centered around the John Birch Society and extreme conservative ideas. Impeach Earl Warren was that whole action was brought about by the John Birch Society. And the thing that we didn't, that Barry Goldwater in '64 was, as it turned out, Barry Goldwater was a libertarian, but he got painted, and your father everybody in '64 remembers the bomb commercial.
Dum, bum, bum.
And that was the end of Barry Goldwater.
Yeah.
But Barry Goldwater, as an American hero, World War II fighter pilot, a hell of a guy, and a libertarian in the end. But he took a kind of a terribly circle the wagons. I listened to some of his quotes. Later on in life, in his 80s, when he was still in the Senate, I would have followed Barry to the ends of the earth.
Oh, yeah.
Because he figured it out. I mean, his statement was clear, and he kind of fit. Yeah, you also have to remember, Jonathan, that the media, blogging, the internet, these reactionary and radical and reactionary, and the radical and the reactionary, of course, are politically diametrically opposed, but they live only a hair's width apart from one another out on the outskirt fringe. They're, in essence, not very different.
Oh, no, they're holding hands, singing "Kumbaya" or hating each other at the same time. Totally.
Yeah, but at the same time, they hate the government. They're just paranoid for different reasons. But without all the media, you just didn't know how crazy people were. I mean, Colonel West would have the balls to criticize this guy. I mean, this guy was up on a Section 32. He would have been dishonorably discharged from the Army, but he took the Section 32, which was like early retirement. Mm-hmm. So when West comes with something, I'm like, consider the source.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, you got to remember the whole civil rights movement, what took place. And considering that that's way pre-internet, and the only thing you could depend upon at all, if you could depend upon it, is, of course, television news, broadcast news at that time, and radio. And it caused... some of this stuff caused riots and burnings in the street, and each side, decided to do whatever they wanted to do between the KKK and the Black Panthers, and I mean,
Bull Connor down south with the German shepherds and the fire hoses, right. And young people. When I say to you, you need to demonstrate. These people, I mean, they got. Gentleman I had lunch with today, and I stood next to one another in a lot of those Vietnam protests. Don't get out in the street. Then this. They don't care. They control this. They don't control you unless you let them. And the only way to not let them control you is to get out in the street and say, "Hell no."
Well, I think the newer form, a lot of the kids these days, and this is a complete guess because I'm not a kid, is hacktivist is a really big thing nowadays,
Hacktivist.
where you can stay in your house. No, it's an old word actually, but where hackers protest.
Well, a hacker's protest. The problem of it is, as I see it at this point, number one, it's an inside joke, and number two, considering that people that really want to do us harm are hacking us on a daily basis. I would think it would almost be unpatriotic to add on internal hacking, while the Chinese and the North Koreans and the Russians and everybody else are trying to hack everything we've got 24/7.
I would think it would depend what it does. I mean, I always found the group Anonymous very interesting.
I understand that, but you've been around me long enough to know that, right or wrong, I'll take responsibility for it. I did it. Okay? Now, talk to me about why I did it. Maybe, was to get your attention. But anonymous hackers, pretty cowardly.
Well, it's
not going to make a difference. It's going to screw things up. It's going to throw a monkey wrench in the works. Believe me, the bureaucracy will roll right over your ass and go, okay, you hacked me.
Well, no, it's definitely a different age.
Look at Snowden, and I don't know how spot on Snowden is or not, but it was a week and a half ago when he said, "I was trained as a spy."
Yeah.
So he wasn't an innocent contractor from the get-go.
Well, we don't really know if that's true or not.
We've stranded him in Russia. That's for sure.
I would
yeah,
say,
and he wasn't happy about being stranded in Russia, but that's
When you take down what was it, the plane from Spain or someplace when we grounded another country's aircraft
I know.
because he thought he was on board. Come on.
Well, I think today's it's a different age. People don't take responsibility. I mean, look at our politicians. It's just the cultural way of we do this and we don't take responsibility. It's the the digital age. So I don't disagree. But you end up with people who Kevin Mitnick, who was locked in a jail for 6 months without getting any sort of due process because they were afraid he was going to whistle and launch a nuclear weapon. So, I don't blame these guys. I don't know if I agree with it, but you can't blame them necessarily depending on what
Well, you know what?
I hate to be biased, but if I thought somebody was going to let loose a nuclear weapon in the United States, I'd lock him in a freaking cell and throw the key away.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he wasn't really capable of that,
Yeah.
but it was an excuse.
Actually, it was fortunate. And there comes the problem. I mean, when we start talking hacking, we all hack.
Fortunately.
Well, the United States hacks, everybody hacks, and it's that's in Snowden's interview, and we're kind of off the election topic here by quite a bit, but Snowden's interview was very interesting because he made a lot of statements that it's kind of like, okay, I was a trained spy. Okay.
Who trained you?
Yeah, who trained you and where did you go? Because CIA, that means you're going to be in a foreign country. He didn't go to a foreign country unless you want to call Hawaii.
You're going to be here.
Yeah, I mean, it just, a lot of it didn't make sense. Now, what did interest me about that interview, and again, we're off topic, but he said that he went to a number of his supervisors to bring up the point that he has found huge amounts of information on citizens of the United States being data mined, and he tried to blow the whistle. So he claims. And but the problem I have is if you go back to Watergate and what the guys did there, they didn't flee. They stood there and said, here's the problem, I've got the proof, and I'm willing to put my ass on the line. Snowden, on the other hand, said, I'm getting the heck out of here, and then I'm going to flap my gums. And
I think Snowden I do think Snowden know that if he was here, it would have been an instant disappear. They would have found a burned body. No, I do.
I don't.
And considering
Ellsberg's still around.
Yeah.
Ellsberg walked into Rand Corporation and Xeroxed top secret documents on the Xerox machine and walked out the front door with them.
I actually think we're in a very scary environment with the government feeling like they have no problem doing that even more than it used to be.
All he would have needed to do is to go to a number of the press outlets, distribute that information to all the press in the United States, legitimate and otherwise, get that information out and sit down and say, okay, here I am, come get me, let's discuss this.
Well, and a couple of things. The media, the American media guy in Great Britain that he spilled the beans to.
Yeah.
This guy's got a horrible anti-American attitude, so it wasn't real palatable in the first place. We came off of WikiLeaks, which I kind of think somebody got to a very vulnerable individual and got him to spill the beans. But yeah, when history writes the record, and you look back and the guy that was WikiLeaks, well, we know what his situation. He's going through a sex change
Julian
operation.
Assange. Right.
Assange.
Julian Assange, is WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
It was Corporal something or other.
Oh,
it was a private. No, he's a private in the Army.
Yeah.
But he worked in a place where he could dump all kinds of classified information in somebody's lab. I have to say this. I have to say this from my conversation at lunch, and my friend really hit on something that resonates. And I said for years, and I've said here on the program, we have to start being citizens again. We don't need to be take one side of political rhetoric or not. We have to realize that we are all American citizens.
So,
and yes.
With that said, let's wrap back up into elections, because I think that follows with what you're saying.
In that case, we need to vote. And do you want to talk how the primary system has changed in California on this election?
I actually, Let me talk a little bit about what's happened in our local areas, and by looking at the numbers of some of the people that have won a seat and or in the primary, and in analyzing.
Just a real quick overview, because it's important what you're going to say. California used to go with a majority rule.
Right.
In other words, the top group of candidates. As of this election, this primary election, we go with the top 2 vote getters.
Right.
Which means, in many cases, that in the general election, people in the same party
Would
will
be
be
running
against one another.
Exactly. It's known as an open
primary.
Open primary, and it was very interesting looking at some of it. When I looked at it, if we want to go into the state of California stuff, with Jerry Brown,
Moonbeam,
which was really interesting here because the statistics showed that 32.1% of the registered voters voted for governor. In this particular case, I don't know, what is there, 10 people that ran for governor in here. Jerry Brown was the top vote getter at 42.89%. And the next guy is Neil Karkashian, right? Isn't that how you pronounce it?
Right, and he is a Republican.
Yeah, and he's a Republican. So the open primary situation worked in that particular situation, which is interesting because a lot of people were saying that Tim Donnelly was going to be the guy that was going to come out, and he got trashed big time. And I think he spent
a lot of money.
A lot of money. And one of the things that's even happened in our local races, as we broke down the statistics, it was almost to a T. He who spent the most amount of money won. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And some of it, not always.
No. I will tell you, and I told you, when on election night.
Yeah.
When they would, I would be approached by all of them, and I made the mistake of buying an Obama bumper sticker in 2008, and I sent them back a letter, and I said, I'm broke, and the reason I'm broke is your fault. Right.
Yeah.
At least a fair amount of it.
I mean, you try to get your little bit of money.
The thing of it is, I said, I am going to vote for the candidate.
Right.
I come from a time where that was all that's important. Not can I send $2? Can I send? I mean, they don't care how you vote. Just send us a little bit of money. And that's a con, folks. That's a con.
I try to stay financially neutral, not donate money to anybody.
The thing that counts is your vote. It's not important.
Right.
Send us a couple of bucks.
It's interesting to look at some of this, like Attorney General Kamala Harris, is the sitting Attorney General, huh?
Didn't she get like 70%?
No, she got 40.26%. The next one is a Republican, and Unfortunately I've never heard of Ronald Gold, and he managed to get 16.95. So that means there's a runoff.
I think he's been in the news. I've seen his name, and I don't watch broadcast TV. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I missed that one altogether. A couple of the others I'd heard of, but anyway, that's kind of interesting because I think that's a Southern California drive on that particular situation.
Again, you said, like, what was it? Feinstein and Pelosi got 73%.
Exactly.
In her district.
Right.
I mean, it's as good as gerrymandered.
Yeah. It is.
As simple as that.
We got a couple of new judges I wanted to talk about real quick. I want to congratulate a couple of them. They all came in the studio here, and there's no runoffs for judges. They all got 50% plus whatever more. In Superior Court Office 1, Vicki Ashworth is our new judge for that. And then in Office 5, Dylan Sullivan came in as the winner in that. So those were decided.
Now you just have to get a court to put them in.
Yeah. Well, that's, every county is facing issues with court buildings and facilities. So that's for another day that I want to talk about. And I had some of the candidates talk about it.
The temporary, I did. I remember.
Yeah.
That temporary bungalow.
Yep. It's a double wide trailer, the one in Cameron Park. And then, we were talking about name recognition, and I think this one for auditor controller in El Dorado County, the sitting auditor controller has been in there for 18 years, has all kinds of baggage with him. I mean, we're looking at possible court litigation against the man, all kinds of things. He still managed to garner 55.4% of the votes.
There's a bunch of recent cases of sexual harassment, of bullying. It's
pointed at him.
There's a lot of people saying he's not a nice guy and he did this and that, and he still got 50% of the vote.
Anyway,
Amazing.
it's kind of interesting.
That's the one they mark every time boom,
exactly.
That's the one you go for.
You know what happens is, and I'm going to make this real quick because we need to wrap the show up, but if you ever go out and knock on doors for a candidate, I think everybody should spend a little bit of time actually trying that, because it's an incredible education to go there and talk to people and say, hey, I'm supporting Joe Blow, right? And I'd like your support. And they go, who?
Is he related to Joe the plumber?
Yeah. I mean, no, the point is we have an uneducated electorate. And not only that, when we only have 32% of those registered people voting, we've got a real issue. They are so disenfranchised, like we talked before. All the statistics point to it. It's absolutely ridiculous.
And folks, I will admit that I did not vote in this primary election because I had changed my location.
Yeah, you were in the middle of a move.
I would have been voting for things in Kern County that I didn't know anything about, and there was really no statewide thing that I felt compelled to get into the fray about.
Yeah, the only thing in splitting the state in half, that went down in flames. And
it's because it was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous. Yeah.
I like John's idea, though, having it on a day where everybody has off.
Well, you know what? Yeah, he's absolutely right. It's this. We're stuck on this Tuesday thing. And,
it is a way of disenfranchisement.
Yeah.
In that, people can't get off of work. In California, we have the polls open till 8 o'clock, as you very well know from past experiences. Yep. You at about 6:30, you'll be standing in line.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, they've made
I've stood in that line, and I'm not getting out until I do it.
I've gone absentee on. It's just so much easier to do that.
I mean, my district, I don't even have a polling place.
Right. And there's a lot of areas, even in El Dorado County, where there is no polling place any longer. You have to do it.
It says you don't have a polling place, do it by mail. So I would have had it driven to Bakersfield, done the absentee ballot, dropped it off at the registrar's office. And I would have, it's only one vote, but I think my vote would have skewed things that I didn't know anything about. So I didn't know.
and I do think paper ballots are a lot safer than digital ones. So
yeah, we're still
the idea of voting over the internet, especially with Heartbleed, the recent thing, is scary to me.
Yeah.
Well, voting machines are kind of scary too, but it's I
got to do it somehow, right?
I think I trust a digital voting machine in a lot better than, say, voting on my computer over a website. That I don't trust.
But you're not around. You're not old enough to remember the voting by slate. On the East Coast, you either could go in and pull a lever and vote for everybody Democratic, or pull a lever and vote for everybody Republican.
Was weird. Oh, you got to look up those machines. You got to look them up.
That was Chicago politics.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That was amazing.
Hey, look, we got to get out of Dodge here.
Yeah, we do. Hey, I want to thank everybody who took the time to tune in. You know what? I'd love to cover this more at a later date, talk about politics in general.
We do have another show next week.
Yeah, and about how poor the turnout was out, and talk about the actual guts of what the election is all about. I think that's really important. So anyway,
30% voted. Remember that.
My house was a polling place in a presidential election of '64.
Oh, there you go. My house as a kid, my parents had their house as a polling place as well. So it was a very common thing to go to somebody's house and vote.
Not
but
anymore.
Hey, I want to thank you guys, John, and Rob. Hey, we're all here for you. Hopefully you got to see a little bit of this, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for watching.